Hi Bart, welcome in this webinar. First of a series on some legal stuff that is really important if you're active in the online business, which most of our clients are. Today we're going to talk about the new Accessibility Act. And for people who run e-commerce sites in the US, they already know what it entails, but a lot of our customers, and probably also yours, are active in Europe, and Europe is lacking a little bit behind on the US in this case. What is going on?
Yeah, usually we are the first to enforce consumer protection. We were the first with data protection laws as well. This time it's the other way around, and indeed in the United States there has been accessibility legislation for quite some time now. And now it's finally coming to the European Union as well. There already was legislation for public services, for government's websites. And now there is also the European Accessibility Act that will impose a set of rules on the accessibility of digital platforms, applications, websites, devices.
So it's really broad.
For private companies.
Much further than
it's
websites.
A lot more than websites. It's everything that's ticketing machines, vending machines, ATM machines, banking machines, everything that is software incorporated into hardware with screens, everything.
Kiosks in stores.
Kiosks in stores, for instance, as well. It's also, of course, websites, both desktop or laptop versions as mobile versions. It's your smartphone itself as well, the accessibility of screens in general. For people with all kinds of disabilities, be it in hearing or in seeing or in motion.
But this episode is not about the technical stuff that needs to happen. That's something we can help with later on, but more about what is the legal stuff behind it. But to give people a sense of what we're talking about, I think it's about explaining what's on pictures. It's about making a website or a form accessible with only a keyboard. It's about subtitling, video. It's about all that kind of stuff.
It's about a lot of things. It's about making sure that everybody can access or have a normal visiting experience on your website or your application, no matter how they are limited in vision, hearing, or the use of their hands and arms. One of the things that we've seen with a few clients who thought that their website was accessible is that navigating the website without using a mouse is complicated. And even there are a few tools on the market that will automate the accessibility of your website for people using a keyboard, for instance, or a shift. If they can only use a few fingers, they can use these knobs too. The problem is that it's a challenge to make sure that your website is accessible in the right way, because jumping from title to title, from subject to subject, from headline to headline, or text to text, or image to text, getting that in a logical and structured way, and making sure that people can navigate the website the same way we would hover with a mouse or look at different aspects of the website by going down or up with the shifter is a challenge. And that's not a legal challenge. It's a usability challenge. But that is one of the things that you will have to do.
Also colors and contrast.
Colors are an issue. Contrast is an issue. People with color blindness have great difficulty distinguishing colors. If you're building a website only using red and green, a lot of people won't be able to see any difference in the colors.
But then you hear every marketer, but that's our brand colors.
That is one of the things that might come on the table. A lot of companies also use typical their own font, for instance. But if that font is hard to read for people with visibility issues, then probably you will have to think about using another font, and then marketeers will come, but that is our brand font. No, it might.
Another thing you hear a lot in businesses is, why do I need to make such a big investment for such a small group of people? But I think that's the biggest mistake. If I understood correctly, up to 1 in 3 people are affected in some way and some level in a disability to use a website in the usual way.
Yeah. Figures range, but up until 1 in 3, and those are not all, to say that with a disrespectful word that used to be a common word, not all of them are handicapped people, but you can have disabilities for a certain period. For instance, if you break your arm, you have a disability that only lasts for a few weeks. So if you put all of that together, people that use glasses are considered to have vision disability. Older people that have difficulty moving, people that have difficulty with with fast-moving images, for instance. If you put all of that together, then indeed 1 in 4, 1 in 3 people has some kind of disability. And if you want to grow your business and if you want to maximize the profits you make on your website, disregarding that large group of people is a lot of money wasted, I think. So there's a good commercial incentive for a lot of companies to get to work with this.
What does the act actually say? What is it we need to do?
Well, the act is very vague, and then there's the implementation in Belgium with an incredible amount of technical guidelines and details that you have to be a specialist to plow your way through dozens and dozens of pages of technical guidelines on how to implement. That is very complicated, but basically the website has to be accessible for everybody. If you don't make it accessible for everybody, you will be able to you risk running into fines in the same.
We heard that in the GDPR legislation.
in the same crazy ballpark figures as GDPR. So it's potentially serious.
Okay, you do want to.
You do want to make sure that you're compliant. You will have to show compliance through yet another policy on your website. Next to the cookie policy, the disclaimer, the terms of use, the privacy policy, there will be an accessibility policy in which you will have to describe the measures that you think you will have to take to be accessible. So you will have to do an audit of your website and see what's necessary. You will have to document what you've already done and explain to people what you've already done. You will have to explain to people what you're going to do to reach the goal that you have. I was going to say that you have set for yourself, but that the law sets for you. So what am I going to do next year, in 2 years, and in 3 years? What is on the agenda? And you will have to do all of that. There is an exception, we'll get to that in a few minutes, and there's an exception in the Act where you get an extra 5 years to get compliant if needed. If you think that that exception applies to you, you will have to explain it in that policy as well. So the policy will have to be your justification to the outside world on what you have done, what you haven't done, and why you haven't.
Okay. But you say there's an exception, 5 years extra, but what is the deadline for most of us? I assume it's a couple of years because there's a lot of work to do.
Tomorrow, a matter of speaking, tomorrow. No, the basic deadline is end of June next year.
But that's coming up fast.
Only 11 months left. Yes. So that means that a lot of companies will have to get to work quite fast, because if you want to audit, set a plan, set goals, implement, test, the year will go by. That being said, I don't think that there's going to be systematic government audits starting the 29th of June next year. So there will be a bit of leniency probably, but basically next year. Unless you are a small business with less than 10 million euro turnover and less than 50 people working for you, then you get 5 years extra.
Yeah,
but 5 years is very short.
Yeah, and for most of our customers, they don't apply here.
They don't.
So they need to be ready next year.
They need to be, yeah.
But that will also mean they will all need technical help from their partner, in their case, us, to get this fixed by next year.
And I'm sure that you're doing a great job helping your clients, but what we see with a lot of web agencies, web developers that we work with, is that a lot of them don't have the knowledge and the skills right now to do the necessary work. So we see very little proactive moves towards the customers. And the thing is, of course, that the owner of the website, the company behind the brand, is liable and responsible for respecting the law. But it's the technical service partner, let's say, that has to do the work. And
that's also why we organize webinars like this, to tell our customers, you need to act, and best to start now, because it's a lot of technical stuff, and you can offload that to your partner. That's great, but there's also a lot of work for the customers themselves in tagging content, in things like that.
These are big projects, yes. Yes, and you have to get to work with it, because as we said, the fines are high. And what we see in data protection, for instance, is that consumers are really starting to know their rights. And we see a lot more people filing complaints than we did a few years ago. And people with disabilities are usually very conscious of their rights because they are a minority group. So you do run a real risk, I think, of running into complaints if you have a web shop and next summer the web shop still isn't accessible as it should be to people with disabilities. There is a real risk of compliance, I think.
Yeah.
So you have to get to work with it, and you have to start moving yourself. You will get to your clients proactively, but in general, don't wait until you get contacted by external partners. Get to work, set up a project internally, make sure that you're compliant in time.
But next to the technical and content changes you need to do, because like we said, it goes very broad. There's also some legal work you need to do.
There is. This is not the most specifically legal topic in the world, but there is a bit of legal work. There's that accessibility policy that you have to set up that needs a bit of legal attention, I think. It needs, as always with policy, you need the technical people to give the input. You need the lawyer to make sure that the input is translated in a legally coherent way, and you need a copywriter to make sure that it's accessible, not from a technical point of view, but from a content point of view for consumers. I see a lot of accessibility declarations on government websites for the time being, cities, provinces, Flemish government websites, where there is a lot of documentation available in that accessibility declaration, but it is written in such a way that no normal consumer without technical background can even start to understand what is written in there. So there's a challenge. And potentially there are contract reviews to be done with a lot of partners that you work with and that deliver the technical services for your website, for your app, for your platform, for the software that you're selling, the hardware with screens that you're putting on the market. There is potentially terms of use to be reviewed if there is an impact on the use of the website. If you make sure that your website is accessible, very often that is based on tracking technology, cookies, for instance, that have an impact on privacy and on cookie policies. So the accessibility will have an impact on your data protection governance, on the cookie governance on your website. So there's a few things that need to be looked at from a legal perspective.
Yeah, yes. The cookies and GDPR, we will make another
video.
because we all think we know what it entails until you see some things happening in the real world, and I think it's a good thing to have a reminder on what it really is, because when we first start talking about it, the law was just out. But now we also know how courts think about it and what the real implications are. So we can also give an update on that. Anything else we need to mention to wrap up accessibility?
No, get to work. It's from the lawyer's perspective, from the legal perspective, not complicated, but you have to get to work. There's a real danger, as I said, of running into ridiculous fines. There's the question of who do I want to be as a company? What message do I want to convey to people? Do I want to be open, trustworthy, consumer friendly? And then that is one of the pieces of the puzzle, I think, to convey that message. So don't wait, don't run risks. As usual, get to work.
Okay, Bart, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
And you at home, I hope to see you in the next webinar.